The Hashashins. They didn't need armies. They needed one man in the right room with a knife. In 1090, a Persian missionary named Hassan-i-Saba climbed a mountain in northern Iran and took a fortress without a fight. Alamut Castle sat on a rock ridge 2,000 meters above sea level in the Alborz Mountains, surrounded by cliffs so steep that a handful of men could hold it against thousands. Hassan didn't storm the walls. He converted the garrison from the inside. By the time the castle's commander realized what had happened, every soldier answered to Hassan. The commander was paid a sum of money and escorted out peacefully. Hassan walked in and didn't leave for 35 years. He never descended the mountain again. From that fortress, Hassan built the most feared covert organization the medieval world had ever seen. The Order of Assassins, the Nizari Ismailis, operated for nearly 200 years across Persia and Syria, and their method was unlike anything that existed before them. They didn't wage wars. They didn't raise massive armies. They killed individual men, the right men, at the right time, in broad daylight, in public, and they rarely tried to escape. Hassan's agents, known as Fidai, were trained for years. They learned languages, customs, disguises. They embedded themselves in enemy courts as servants, soldiers, even advisors, sometimes for months or years before striking. When the moment came, they used a dagger, always a dagger, never poison, never an arrow from a distance. The kill had to be personal. It had to be seen. The terror wasn't just the death. It was the message. No one is safe. Not behind walls. Not surrounded by guards. Not on a throne. And it worked. In 1092, Hassan's Fidai killed Nizam al-Mulk, the most powerful vizier of the Seljuk Empire, the man who essentially ran the largest Muslim state in the world. He was stabbed while being carried in his litter, surrounded by his entourage. 2 years later, the Seljuk Sultan, who had sent 2 armies to destroy Alamut, was found dead in his bed. The armies withdrew. For the next century, the assassins shaped the politics of the entire Middle East through targeted killing. Caliphs, emirs, generals, crusader lords, no one was beyond reach. They killed the Count of Tripoli in a church. They killed the Fatimid Caliph's vizier in Cairo. They attempted to kill Saladin twice. The Sultan of Egypt reportedly slept in a wooden tower he built himself because he trusted no structure that other hands had touched. The assassins didn't conquer territory. They didn't need to. They made every ruler in the region govern with one eye on the shadows. Entire military campaigns were abandoned because a single dagger on a pillow was found in a general's tent, a warning from Alamut. Hassan had invented something that wouldn't be named for another 800 years: state-sponsored terrorism as foreign policy. One man, one knife, and the course of empires changed overnight. The order survived until 1256, when the Mongols under Hulagu Khan did what no one else could. They besieged Alamut and burned it to the ground. The last Grand Master surrendered and was eventually kicked to death by Mongol soldiers. The libraries of Alamut, rumored to contain centuries of astronomical, philosophical, and scientific texts, were destroyed. Almost everything we know about the assassins was written by their enemies. Hassan-i-Saba's own words survive only in fragments. But his invention, the calculated, public, political assassination as a tool of power, outlived his fortress by 1,000 years. Skull and bones. They don't run the world. They just keep ending up in charge of it. Every spring at Yale University, 15 juniors are tapped to join a society so secretive that for over a century, members refused to confirm it existed. The Order of Skull and Bones was founded in 1832 by William Huntington Russell after he returned from studying in Germany, reportedly inspired by secret societies he encountered there. Its headquarters is a windowless sandstone building on the Yale campus called the Tomb. There are no signs. There are no visitors. Members are called bonesmen, and they are bound by oaths that last a lifetime. The rituals inside the tomb have been the subject of speculation for nearly 200 years. Leaked accounts describe initiation ceremonies involving coffins, confessions of sexual history, and mud wrestling. Members allegedly share their deepest secrets with the group as a bonding mechanism and as insurance. If everyone has dirt on everyone, no one talks. That all sounds like a fraternity with better branding. What makes Skull and Bones different is the list. 3 U.S. presidents were Bonesmen: William Howard Taft, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush. In 2004, both major party presidential candidates, George W. Bush and John Kerry, were members. The American voters' choice for leader of the free world was between 2 men from the same 15-person club. Both refused to discuss it on camera. But the presidency is just the surface. Bonesmen have run the CIA. Bush Sr. was its director before becoming president. They've run the Federal Reserve. They've led the Council on Foreign Relations. They've built Wall Street law firms, media empires, and banking dynasties. The Harriman family, the Rockefellers, the Whitneys, the Bundys, the families that built America's foreign policy infrastructure in the 20th century were overwhelmingly drawn from this one room on the Yale campus. The Russell Trust Association, which manages the society's finances, holds assets whose value has never been publicly disclosed. Members reportedly receive a $15,000 gift upon initiation and access to an island retreat, Deer Island on the St. Lawrence River, where gatherings continue long after graduation. Does Skull and Bones secretly control the government? Probably not in the way conspiracy theorists imagine. There's no shadow council issuing orders. But what the society does, and what it has always done, is something arguably more powerful. It takes 15 young men every year from America's most privileged class, bonds them through shared secrets, and sends them into the world with a network of connections so dense and so loyal that the line between private friendship and public power disappears entirely. They don't need to conspire. They just need to call each other. The Illuminati. They lasted 11 years. They've been blamed for everything for the next 250. On May 1st, 1776, a 28-year-old professor of law at the University of Ingolstadt in Bavaria founded a secret society with 5 members. His name was Adam Weishaupt. He called his group the Order of the Illuminati. The goal was ambitious and, for its time, genuinely radical. Weishaupt wanted to infiltrate the power structures of European society, the churches, the courts, the universities, and replace superstition and monarchy with reason, science, and democratic self-governance. He modeled his organization on the Jesuits, who he both admired and despised. He borrowed the hierarchical structure of Freemasonry, and he kept everything secret because in 18th century Bavaria, what he was advocating could get you killed. The Illuminati grew fast. Within a decade, the order had between 2,000 and 3,000 members across Bavaria, Austria, and parts of France and Italy. They recruited intellectuals, civil servants, doctors, lawyers, and, critically, members of existing Masonic lodges, which gave them access to networks of powerful men already accustomed to secrecy. The writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was likely a member. Duke Ernest II of Gotha was a member. High-ranking judges and government ministers were members. The Illuminati didn't just discuss Enlightenment ideas. They placed people inside the machinery of government. Then, it all collapsed. In 1784, the Bavarian government banned all secret societies. In 1785, a courier carrying Illuminati documents was struck by lightning and killed. The papers were recovered, and when authorities read them, they found detailed plans for infiltrating state institutions, manipulating public opinion, and undermining the authority of the Catholic Church. The Bavarian elector, Karl Theodor, was horrified. He ordered raids. Weishaupt's home was searched. More documents were seized and published. Weishaupt fled Bavaria and spent the rest of his life in exile. The Illuminati was officially dissolved by 1787. That should have been the end. 11 years, a few thousand members, a dramatic collapse, a footnote in the history of European radicalism. Instead, it became the most durable conspiracy theory in Western civilization. Within a decade of its dissolution, two authors, Augustin Barruel and John Robison, published books arguing that the Illuminati had secretly survived and orchestrated the French Revolution. The books were bestsellers across Europe and America. The idea was intoxicating. The revolution hadn't been caused by poverty, inequality, or a corrupt monarchy. It had been engineered by a hidden hand. Order was being destroyed on purpose. That template, a shadowy group pulling strings behind every major upheaval, never went away. The Illuminati have been blamed for the American Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, both World Wars, the assassination of JFK, the creation of the Federal Reserve, the music industry, and the global financial system. Every triangle on a dollar bill, every celebrity hand gesture, every unexplained coincidence gets fed into the machine. The real Illuminati lasted 11 years and had the organizational capacity of a university debate club. The imaginary Illuminati has controlled the world for 250 years. Adam Weishaupt couldn't overthrow Bavaria. His ghost overthrows everything. The Black Hand. 7 teenagers with pistols and a grudge accidentally started the deadliest century in human history. The Black Hand, officially Ujedinjenje ili Smrt, Unification or Death, was founded in Belgrade in 1901 by a group of Serbian military officers who believed that all Serbs scattered across the Balkans should be united under one nation. Their leader was Dragutin Dimitrijević, a colonel in Serbian military intelligence, known by his codename Apis. He was a bull of a man, charismatic and ruthless, who had already helped orchestrate the 1903 assassination of the Serbian king and queen, a massacre so brutal that the royal couple's mutilated bodies were thrown from a palace window. By 1914, the Black Hand had operatives embedded in the Serbian military, the border police, and the government itself. Apis ran an intelligence network that smuggled weapons and agents across the border into Bosnia, which had been annexed by Austria-Hungary in 1908, an act Serbia considered a theft of Serbian-populated land. In June 1914, Apis approved a plan to assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand during his visit to Sarajevo. He armed a cell of young Bosnian Serb recruits, most of them teenagers, most of them dying of tuberculosis, all of them willing to die. They were given pistols, bombs, and cyanide capsules. They were positioned along the Archduke's motorcade route. What happened next is covered in another video, but what matters here is what the Black Hand intended versus what it caused. They wanted Bosnia. They got World War I. They wanted Serbian unification. They got Serbia invaded, occupied, and devastated. A quarter of the entire Serbian population died during the war. They wanted to weaken Austria-Hungary. They did. But they also destroyed Russia, collapsed the Ottoman Empire, and created a power vacuum that led to the rise of fascism. And the Black Hand didn't survive its own success. After the war, the Serbian government, embarrassed by the organization's role and afraid of Apis's growing power, put him on trial for treason. The charges were likely fabricated. Apis was convicted and executed by firing squad in 1917. The organization he built was dissolved. The country he fought for was absorbed into Yugoslavia. The secret society that lit the fuse of the 20th century was erased by the very nation it claimed to serve. Opus Dei. They don't hide in the shadows. They hide in plain sight. On October 2nd, 1928, a 26-year-old Spanish priest named José María Escrivá founded a Catholic organization based on a single idea. Holiness isn't just for monks and nuns. Ordinary people, bankers, lawyers, politicians, janitors, could sanctify their daily work as a form of worship. The organization was called Opus Dei, Latin for work of God. It sounded modest. It wasn't. Over the next 90 years, Opus Dei grew into the most powerful and controversial institution inside the Catholic Church. It operates in over 90 countries. It has roughly 90,000 members. Its numerary members, the most committed tier, live in Opus Dei residences, surrender their salaries to the organization, practice corporal mortification, including wearing a cilice, a spiked chain around the thigh, for 2 hours daily, and submit to a level of spiritual supervision that critics have compared to cult-like control. But the real influence isn't in the rituals. It's in the recruitment strategy. Opus Dei targets elite professionals and institutions. It runs universities, business schools, and think tanks across Europe and Latin America. The University of Navarra in Spain, founded by Escrivá himself, is one of the top-ranked private universities in Europe and a pipeline for Spain's political and business elite. Opus Dei members have served as cabinet ministers, central bank governors, and heads of multinational corporations. In Spain, members held key positions during the Franco dictatorship, driving economic modernization while the regime maintained authoritarian control. During the pontificate of John Paul II, Opus Dei reached the peak of its influence within the Vatican. Escrivá was fast-tracked to sainthood, beatified in 1992, canonized in 2002, faster than almost any figure in modern church history. Opus Dei was granted a unique status as a personal prelature, meaning it answers directly to the Pope and operates independently of local bishops. No other Catholic organization has this structure. It gives Opus Dei an autonomy inside the Church that no other group enjoys. Critics accuse Opus Dei of operating as a secretive elite network that uses religious devotion as a cover for political and financial influence. Former members have described intense psychological pressure, isolation from family, and difficulty leaving. The organization denies these claims and insists it is simply a path to holiness. What's undeniable is the pattern. In country after country, Opus Dei members appear at the highest levels of government, finance, and education, not as an organized conspiracy, but as a network of deeply committed individuals who share the same formation, the same values, and the same loyalties. They don't need to conspire. The formation does the work. Train someone from the age of 18 to see their career as a divine mission. Surround them with others who think the same way, and place them in positions of power. The results take care of themselves. The Committee of 300. They didn't need a secret handshake. They had the British Empire. In the early 1700s, the British East India Company was the most powerful corporation on Earth. It had its own army, its own navy, its own territories. It governed more people than most nations, and at its peak, a small circle of shareholders, directors, and connected aristocrats controlled its direction. They weren't elected. They weren't appointed by the public. They were simply rich enough to sit at the table. This circle evolved. As the East India Company's formal power declined, the networks it created survived. They migrated into banking, into insurance, into commodity trading. The families and institutions that had profited from the company, Barings, Rothschilds, Sassoons, continued to operate in the same overlapping circles. London became the financial center of the world, not because of geography, but because the people who controlled global trade already lived there. By the late 19th century, these networks had formalized into something resembling a governing class. Cecil Rhodes, the diamond magnate who colonized an entire region of Africa and named it after himself, wrote in his will about establishing a secret society modeled on the Jesuits, dedicated to expanding British influence across the globe. his vision wasn't hypothetical. He funded the Rhodes Scholarship specifically to cultivate future leaders who would share his worldview. Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar. So were dozens of heads of state, Supreme Court justices, and intelligence chiefs. Rhodes's circle overlapped with another, the Milner Group, led by Alfred Milner, who governed South Africa and later shaped British policy during and after World War I. Milner's associates created the Royal Institute of International Affairs, known as Chatham House, in 1920. Its American counterpart, the Council on Foreign Relations, was founded the following year. These weren't conspiracy fronts. They were real institutions where the people who actually made foreign policy gathered to discuss it privately, off the record, before presenting their conclusions to governments. The Committee of 300 as a formal body was popularized by former intelligence officer John Coleman, who argued it was a ruling council descended from the East India Company's board. Whether that specific claim holds up is debatable. What isn't debatable is the pattern. A small number of interconnected families, educated at the same institutions, sitting on the same boards, attending the same private conferences, have shaped British and by extension global policy for over 3 centuries. They didn't need secret rituals. They had something more effective: shared class, shared schools, shared interests, and doors that only opened from the inside. The British Empire collapsed. The network didn't. It just changed addresses.